Hey there, film fans. I am Jeff.
I'm Dave.
And I'm John, and welcome back to The Love of Cinema, a pod in which we'll challenge one another to discuss movies, both new and old, with a strictly positive critical eye.
That's right. And to avoid any lazy negativity, we have decided to make this a drinking game.
Drink!
Any negative criticism about a film is allowed, but we try to keep it positive here, not like those other stuffy news movie podcasts you talk about. So if we get negative or shitty about a film, you're going to hear this sound. That means we're drinking, people. Dave,
Hell
you
yeah.
take a drink in the middle of our intro, bro.
So, pour yourselves a glass.
You have the next line. What the
Give it
hell?
up for the films we love, perhaps. Maybe I was trying to do it like ventriloquist style, you know?
Oh, you didn't.
And the films
have
that
it.
needs to
It's
love.
on record.
Yeah, I didn't rehearse it. So yeah, obviously that didn't work.
All right, people. That's the scoop. That's what's going on. We
That's
have
the botched
two
intro.
great films to talk about. All right, but let's head over to our fucking shout outs first.
Shout outs. We drink beer. We have a beer sponsor. His name is Carlos Barroso. His handle is C Barroso Bar 2019. You can find it on Instagram for all the live updates on everything he's doing. Becoming that brewmaster. They're drinking the beers. I'm not. I'm jealous. Give him a follow. It's C Barroso Bar 2019. That is CBARROZOBAR 2019. And as always, the music you hear on this episode and every single episode is provided by the artist Dasein. That is Dasein, Dasein. If you like the music, go on over to soundcloud.com/Dasein-artist. You can download everything for free. Also, as always, if you can just rate, review, subscribe to us, the handles on all the platforms are at The Love of Cinema Pod, except for Twitter, it is just The Love of Cinema. So if you could give us some action, we're going to really appreciate it. Back to you, Jeff.
All right, people. We are now in week 4 of our segment. It was the best of film. It was the worst of film of 2020, where we are going to discuss 2 films. First, we always start with our presumed awards season film. So Oscars, Golden Globes, all that kind of stuff. Again, we are not odds makers, but today we have chosen Mank. Ow, I just hit my headphones. Mank, directed by
How many beers
David
did you have
Fincher.
pre-show?
He's
Written
not even
by
drunk
his
yet.
father, Jack Fincher, starring Gary Oldman et al. And our presumed Razzie favorite, which will be our second film in this series, today is Capone, starring Tom Hardy. Did you know that Tom Hardy made a Capone movie this past year? Probably not a great sign. So we're going to talk about that film second. But before we do, let's go around the horn really quick with a nice round of what you've been watching. Dave, I have a feeling I know at least one answer.
Yeah, I did some more of the Marvel stuff. I finished up with Endgame.
Yeah.
I actually changed my tune in Endgame this time on the rewatch. Sitting
What'd you
there,
think?
when I went in without complete and utter, like, over-the-top expectations, it's good. It's not, is it the best film in the world? No. Is it, like, but it's good. It's solid, and I feel like they wrapped up what they wanted to do.
Nice.
I also discovered this little gem on Amazon Prime. It's a series called The Feed, and it's set in, like, the future where basically you have Facebook built into your head. And so you're connected to the entire world and the internet through your brain, and vice versa. You can share your life and just, like, anything that you're doing, and it takes a visual feed off your eye and that sort of thing. And someone finds a way to tamper with it, and all hell breaks loose. I'm not kidding. One of the best tension builders I think I've ever seen on, like, how to build tension in a TV show. There's one scene in it where he's on, like, because these people get taken over and they just snap like that. And there's this one scene where I was watching it on the train, and I'm, like, sitting there, like, clenching up on the train. Like, it was a really good show for tension. Really slow, but good tension, good slow tension build.
Shout out to The Feed. Shout out to Bryce Dallas Howard and Black Mirror. That's, like, my favorite Black Mirror episode. She has, like, the Facebook.
Nosedive.
in her
Yes.
Nosedive. Thank you.
Yeah. John.
Nice. I discovered something last week, and I'm not, discover's not the right word, because I've heard some film pods talking about this. I've heard a couple, I've seen some critics write about it, and I was resisting for no good reason. It's a film that's on Prime, Amazon Prime, that's called The Vast of Night. And I'm going to encourage you guys to watch it, and everyone listening. And I think after you watch it, you might agree with me. I think this thing should have made our list for some possible awards. It is my favorite film I've seen this year for last year. It's my favorite new film of 2020. First film by Andrew Patterson, written, directed, 50s Americana a little sci-fi stuff there for you. It kind of feels like an Outer Limits Twilight Zone episode, but it has really interesting spins on it.
What is it with first-time directors knocking it out of the park with sci-fi?
I mean, right? It's great.
Yeah.
And this is a fresh telling. There's some really innovative, really interesting filmmaking techniques that I don't even want to talk to you about. So go check it out. We'll check back in next week. Maybe this thing will make our potential Oscars list. I also checked out Disney docs, The Imagineers. Has anybody's watched that? That was super fun. Yeah. Got me into the spirit. And I started watching some of the James Bond. Jeff, you mentioned Casino Royale not too long ago on the pod, and I hadn't seen that one in years and years. So I watched that and Quantum of Solace. I might keep going, but fun stuff. How about you?
Just before you start, I don't know whether you noticed, but Peter McLean's dropped in on the Facebook chat saying g'day.
Hey!
Peter.
Yeah, I don't know whether it's possibly just wanted me to say it. I don't know.
Yeah.
Peter, keep the chats coming, Peter. We want to talk to you.
Do some Aussie talk.
Property Daddy, let's do it. I watched WandaVision, of course. I hadn't seen it yet, and so I just watched it all. Dave, I just want a very short answer. Is it happening too fast? Did you wish they dragged it out a little more, or are you happy with what's going on?
The biggest criticism from everyone is they dragged it out too long. Everyone's,
too long.
Yes.
No, I wanted a series. I was happy with the sitcom format. I was ready to really have.
They're not.
Season.
They're absolutely not done with the sitcom format. Now I think you'll just get the inside and outside because they've still got a whole heap of sitcoms to go through. They're only up to the 70s. They got the 80s, 90s, up to 2000s, like single camera comedy.
So, yes, anybody who hasn't watched yet, okay, we're having fun. Go along with the ride. So WandaVision, and then last Sunday after this episode, I watched the Peanut Butter Falcon. Very random, but I
saw that.
I liked it. I thought it was cool. I like movies like that. Simple, not a lot of characters. I thought it was cool. Shout out to Shia.
You know, that shot here in the Outer Banks, North Carolina.
You know what? I saw Outer Banks this summer. I know, with all the teenage girls and Chloe and I, and it looked exactly like Outer Banks. So I'm glad you mentioned that. Awesome. Okay, so that's our round of what we've been watching. You can go ahead and follow us and tell us what you've been watching. All right, let's do it. So best of film, worst of film. We are, of course, going to start with Mank. Now, to those of you who heard about Mank and are kind of thinking, what is Mank? That sounds familiar. Long story short, David Fincher, who we did Seven recently. He also did The Social Network and a lot of other fantastic films. David Fincher's father, Jack Fincher, wrote one screenplay and then died a long time ago. And David Fincher has been trying to do this film for a long time, and he decided to do this year. It is about the screenwriter of Citizen Kane, the great Orson Welles film. Orson Welles and Mank share screen credit. The official title and the credit comes up in the film, but more or less Mank wrote this script, and it's about him, about what's going on in Hollywood at the time. Citizen Kane came out in 1941, but the film does a lot of flashbacks throughout the 30s, where during the Great Depression, it was basically relevant to now. It was a lot of the Democratic Socialists trying to share the wealth with the people to help get people out of poverty. And then the Republicans saying that people need to work their way out of poverty, I think is the general take that they want me to take away having seen this movie. So a lot of relevant themes going on here. And that's basically the story.
Media manipulation, everything.
Yes, very, very relevant to our times. It's filmed in black and white, definitely stylistic. This is definitely a love to film, especially film at that time. Yes, so it kind of has the vibe that Citizen Kane has, but modernized, I think, is probably a good takeaway for an original description. Who wants to go first with initial reactions? What do you think?
We were kind of chit-chatting about this before we started, but let's just kick it off. Has everyone seen Citizen Kane once, twice?
I have seen it once,
multiple times,
except for the dance sequence. For a while, I did a stint in a theme park, and it was played on a screen regularly. The birthday sequence.
I'm sure you don't love it because of that, but I love that sequence in the context of the movie. I love the way they filmed it. Anyway,
yes,
nice. I have it, and I actually knew that you had. And I was thinking about watching it this week, but I'm happy to be unsullied. And actually, it's going to come up later, but I'm happy to be an unsullied asshole film person who has never seen Citizen Kane.
Yeah, I don't think I knew that. I'm sure you told me that at some point along the way,
Jeff.
but I think I suppressed it. Yeah, dude, go fuck yourself.
I've walked up the AFI list. I did Casablanca. I did all the AFI stuff, and I just never...
You didn't touch it. It's a good movie, man. It's a really good movie.
That's what I hear. Got to see it for Mank.
Dave, let me ask you a direct question, because I've read a bunch of articles about the making of this movie, and You
Yeah.
know, a lot of them are how Fincher led up to this with what Jeff was referring to with his dad. I think he wrote it in 2003. So like since then
No,
he's
it
been
was
kicking it
way
around
back. This
trying
is
to make it.
it was over 20 years they've been trying to get this made.
Yeah.
It was over 20 years, but I feel, didn't something happen in the early 2000s where they thought they were going to get it off the ground before his like I
Yeah,
think like
and
right after his dad passed or right before
the studio.
something?
I think that was the time the studio balked because they didn't want to shoot it in color. Like the Fincher didn't want to shoot it in color, and the studio balked at releasing a black and white film.
Yeah. So filmmaking wise though, he did eventually, I don't know if anyone remembers on the pod, but we talked about David Fincher in an article several, maybe 2 months ago, maybe a month ago. And he was talking about Mank, but he was also having a lot of commentary on what it is like being an auteur filmmaker that has now signed on with one of the monster streamers. He's had a good deal with Netflix basically since House of Cards. And this is, I think, his first film that he has put, feature film that he has put straight out to Netflix. But he's done multiple series and everything. So one of the things that he loves so much about it is that not only does he have Final Cut, which he's had for a while in his contract, but he has absolute creative control. So they basically just hand you the keys to the car and then you get to go. So filmmaking wise, Dave, what'd you think? He did all the old school stuff. He did in-room dissolve. So he faded lights correctly. He was messing with the aspect ratios. I'm not sure if it worked for me overall that he filmed it completely digitally.
The aspect ratio of 2.2 to 1, I haven't seen that in a long time. That's
a long time. He definitely threw it back.
Yeah.
But I thought it was really cool. I loved all the in-room fades. I thought that was fun. Do you think it worked though for the storytelling, or were you a little distracted by the old school filmmaking techniques?
No, after pretty much by the time you got to the backlot, the first flashback, I was on board with it.
Yeah.
The only time they lost me
yeah.
was when they went outside in the garden scene and they've committed to this look, but the garden scene is of course dark and underlit, and I'm sure like you're releasing this for Netflix, so people are going to watch it in their living room. So I'm sure that like it would have been fine on a cinema screen, but on my TV at home, I had to turn the lights out to be able to see any detail at all in that shot. It was just like the way they were shooting it, which is exactly how it would have appeared on a movie screen.
Right.
I couldn't really see what was going on. Apart from that, like hats off for committing to that, and like even the audio, it was like monaural. They even added the reverb of an uncarpeted picture house. Onto the soundtrack, because at first I was like, what the fuck is that reverb? Like why is that on everything? And then I realized it's meant to sound like you're sitting in a 1940s picture house. There's no carpet, there's no wall buffeting, like the sound's coming from one direction only. Like that's exactly what it's meant to sound like. And
I've always noticed that, a lot of times you can hear a soft echo because of the way they used to record ADR in harder rooms, or if they were recording live audio, which was more rare, but if they did it, they were always on a stage. So you can hear echo in a lot of old movies with dialogue. I did have a house and you hear an echo and you're like, what is that?
I did have a little snicker to myself that like when we're making films, they put all the things back in that we spend so much time trying to take out or get rid of. It's like, no, let's put that all back in. It's like, all right, let's make this like an indie film. But
story-wise, though, I thought I think this is getting a little bit of flack. There are some people who are already saying that Fincher did not go after Wells hard enough, and that they kind of let him. I've heard some comparisons that everyone who has ever criticized Orson Welles has said that he came out so strong, but he was a real megalomaniac in the beautiful way, like a true artist, and he had a terrible time making movies after Citizen Kane because studios
lost so much money.
They lost so much money. They were very ahead of their time in a lot of ways, but he was mostly had so much ego. He did not want to play ball with studios. And I think some people have made comparisons to David Fincher in that regard, not from a financial standpoint, but from a creative control standpoint. And I know he referenced something in a Criterion article I read where he basically said, I think the interviewer asked him directly, do you think your father would be proud of the product that got to the screen? And he said, I think so. But if there was any criticism, my dad would say you were too soft on Wells. That he wanted him to kind of point out the fact that Wells there was a little bit more of a creative war, perhaps going on between Mankiewicz, who Gary Oldman plays, Herman Mankiewicz, and Orson Welles.
I got that. I feel like to
do
do
too.
anything,
it didn't bother me at all.
To do anything more would make Wells too much of a an overbearing
Yeah.
presence in the story of
Yes.
Mankiewicz.
It's not about
Yeah.
Wells.
Yeah.
Exactly. It's not about Wells.
So
I loved
yeah.
that it was basically the vehicle of the phone call. Like this overbearing presence mostly
Yeah.
speaks to Mankiewicz through the phone. This device that was really, being used in such a way. It was a big deal to get a phone call back then, especially when he was in this film. He's isolated in the desert, riding by himself, and every now and then he gets a call from the director god to bitch at him about something or confuse him or trick him with the alcohol. I thought it was so effective.
I really related that because I've been on gigs where like when the phone rings, it's a horror show. It's like the camera's zooming in and panning out at the same time. It's like, I don't want to answer that. But yeah, so that really resonated with me.
Yeah.
It felt like it could be a radio play, which is obviously what Orson Welles did to basically get Hollywood contracts, because he was a theater actor, and a little bit of a traveler. Who knows where the fuck he got the money to like travel around and learn theater. He was 24 years old when he was writing and directing and basically working with studios and financiers and shit. 24 years old. Didn't go to college.
I'm sure he had backers because like he became like the darling of Hollywood for a while. So people just throw money at you and take you places.
It was RKO, right? RKO took a huge risk, I think.
They basically, it says it in the opening crawl, they basically gave him full creative control, do what you want, work with who you want.
Yeah.
Yeah. But it does have that feel that it could work as a radio play. It's definitely a style that takes some getting used to modern audiences, I will say, especially people who have not seen Citizen Kane, which is why, thankfully, I chose that outlet. I started this movie early in the week, too, so even before I would have made the decision to watch Citizen Kane. So it does take some getting used to. I would preface to anybody who hasn't seen Citizen Kane if they want to see this film, because Gary Oldman's going to be getting buzz for the next couple weeks. He's going to be nominated for sure. I don't know about anybody else, if Fincher will, if his dad will get a screenwriting credit or whatever.
That'd be nice.
I believe this is not the original screenplay category. Is an interesting one because there aren't that many popular movies that are critically successful, commercially successful, if you can even use that term this year, that are original. Everybody's based off of something. And so that is where you get your, like Rian Johnson got his for Knives Out. It's like, that's where, so I feel like Jack Fincher is going to get one. But again, it's not about the Academy Awards. All I'm saying is that people are going to want to know if they should watch this. It's very streamable on Netflix, and it takes some getting used to this format.
Side note, I still haven't seen Knives Out, by the way. Every time I go to put it on.
Oh my God, it's so good.
Every time I go to put it on, though, my brain goes, remember what happened to Star Wars?
No. Oh my God.
They're making a sequel too. Yeah.
And the cast is so good. Okay, we're not talking about Knives Out, Dave. Yeah. So anyway, I will say, especially when you start seeing like intro, flashback, and they're talking about Mankiewicz's. So basically, they're writing it as if they're narrating his life, Mankiewicz's life. So the flashbacks are almost like what you would write at the top of the screenplay page, and some people who are not like stuffy, like, oh, that's so filmy. I've worked with Celtics or Final Draft or whatever. It's like that might catch you off guard, and it's in black and white on top of that. So like, some people might just start to reach for their phone, and I want to give people a heads up. Like, you might have to make the commitment to watch this film.
Yeah, I mean, the funny thing is, I went in cold for this, like, and I knew kind of was.
Guy,
I knew, but I knew kind of what it was about. But it almost lost me. Like the first part of it is a little bit. There's not really much there. They're just getting him set up. I'm like it's in black and white. I'm like, I don't know if I'm gonna like this. But watch it for 10 minutes, and I challenge you to be able to tear yourself away. Like 10.
I would take the challenge, because there were a couple times where I was okay to pause it.
Okay, by 10 to 20 minutes, like I was hooked. I was like, I need to watch the story. And then, of course, Charles Dance turns up, and you're like, yeah.
Well, of course, Charles Dance, yeah.
Jeff, was it just the style get in the way of the story, and the story was okay, or did the story also lose you a little bit?
That's what I say. I was curious about asking you guys too. I wasn't lost. I liked this movie. Didn't love it. Liked it a lot. Yeah. And obviously it's brilliant. And I feel like I have this conversation like once a month on this podcast, where I know that this was made by masters. I don't think anybody watching this isn't aware that this is directed perfectly, or, as well as it needs to be. It was written airtight. The script is really amazing. The Gary Oldman's lines, his pacing, the timing, the choice of words. It's really great. It's just not very conversational, because it's meant to be that time period. Like, as I said before, like a radio play. It doesn't seem like, everything seems calculated a little bit. And they, like, the clever lines they say, like, are you ever serious. Yes, only about things that are funny. Ha ha ha. Like they have those kinds of things, and it just takes getting used to because it's not very realistic to like actual reality.
Dude, when that line was
So
dropped, my wife looked at me and went, "That's you."
yeah, exactly,
It's
and
like-
and it makes sense and it checks out. But
like,
like
that's
you
not
have to enter
cool.
the worlds. You have to enter the world. And there were some times where there are these long, lush, moving scenes that you see in old movies, but we're not at the Naval Observatory. We're at Mank's flashback, or something. The stuff in the ballroom was fantastic, but the garden scene with Dave, that was for me too. I was like, this doesn't feel like Rebel Without a Cause's scenes. Like it seemed like he was talking to Marion Seyfried. I didn't know what they were talking about, and they were walking around and kicking around puddles, and I was like, what's I didn't get what the point was, and I just some things felt a little slow, which movies back then did feel slow. So was this made for Fincher? Yes. Was it made for a modern audience? Only if you're on board. That's what I would say.
Yeah.
Oh, I was
agree,
like,
man.
my fingers on the trigger here, and I was like,
you could do it, Dave.
Yeah, stop-
you could do
stop.
it. Lean into it.
It's okay. No, you worded it so well. I'm like, I can't mess with that.
Yeah.
Look, I know this is
No,
a
but
fantastic. It's a good movie. I'm not going to rewatch it, but it's a really, really good movie.
I think, I mean, I'm not sure if it was a really, really good movie, to be honest with you. I think
Okay, all right, there you go. Yeah, here we go. That's for both of us. It was made as well as he could have made it, but
I think so. And I mean, obviously this is said with love and respect, just like you did. I know his dad wrote it, and I know it's an awesome thing. David Fincher is notorious for pushing screenplays to their essential intention and obstacles. He's worked with really famous screenplay writers. He's worked with across genres, and he is apparently, again, a real, and I mean this in the best way possible, a real tyrant for making sure that script is not, we're not filming a fucking frame of this movie until we all know the story is up front and center and it's captivating. And there was a little bit of me that was curious if he relied, or if he thought that maybe the obstacle of Gary Oldman as Herman Mankiewicz's addiction to alcohol and his mania that came from it might be enough of an obstacle to cover the entire story. And I don't know if it was. I'm not going to say it wasn't. Like, I still enjoyed watching this movie, and I love, old movies. So I definitely had to, I didn't have as much of a problem, like kind of sinking into that style, but I kept waiting for a new obstacle to be introduced. Obviously there was, the fun filmmaking things that were not filmmaking isn't technically filmmaking is in the story of the movie. There was time, there were scheduling, there were budgets, there were things that Herman Mankiewicz was up against that he had to get this script out to. He had creative resistance from one of the producers who was kind of his point man between Wells and him. So there were the usual things that I was expecting. But personally, for him, I don't know if there was enough of an obstacle other than the addiction and the scheduling for Mankiewicz that made me feel like I was kind of dissolving into his world and not watching a movie about a really famous movie.
I mean, he was the obstacle. To be honest, he didn't take anything
and did
seriously.
That work for you, though?
He got drunk and ruined his career many times. He had like issues with gambling. He was his own obstacle. I mean, and it was almost like when you watch. The only thing I can compare it to is watching Breaking Bad, where you get like 3/4 of the way through the season and Walter's starting to get it together, and it's like, yeah, he's gonna make it this time. He's gonna turn it all around, and then something happens. You're like, Walter, no. And like that's what it was like at least 5 or 6 times in this movie.
But what Breaking Bad knew is that they had to keep it exciting. So this film is a little different because Mank can be clever and he can work the rooms. And we haven't talked about the social element. The social element and the by social I mean he's a social critic, aka he's a supporter of Upton Sinclair's bid for governor, for instance, and he was considered a socialist, and the Republican ended up winning, and that comes up a lot in this. So it's basically he's an alcoholic, and also his political ideology does not fit in with the Hollywood elites who he's balling with because he's a writer for all of their big picture studio films. So those two elements we haven't talked about too much. Back to Breaking Bad. He's selling drugs and he's working with criminals. So there's always that exciting element that can come out. This, it's clever conversation. It's his brilliance, which is good, but it's like the problem is we know Citizen Kane gets made. We know it happens.
Yeah.
Whether or not he finishes it, honestly, if it ended and it was like Orson Welles had to do the rewrites, I'd be like, who the fuck cares? Like, great, Mank still wrote the script. I don't care who wrote the rewrites. You know what I mean? So
Everyone writes
the Apollo
rewrites.
13, for instance, has to work the whole film to convince you this might not work. But the whole
Exactly.
movie, we know that this movie's going to be made. So we need, like, what are the other sprinklings? And if they're going to go for the social criticism element of it, or the alcoholic like thing of it, if that's going to be the punch, but they don't. I don't know. That's why there's something about that didn't hook me.
That's the thing though. Like the movie isn't explaining that the movie got made. It's explaining why the movie had the content it did.
That's correct.
It deals with all of his issues with everyone throughout the film who influenced his writing.
Yeah, so I should say that. Should we care about that? That's the question. It's like, well, these characters in Citizen Kane are actually these people in Mank's real life. Yeah, that's an interesting question.
Yeah, I mean, if you know the story behind Kane, that was like that writing that was a giant fuck you to that guy.
That's great.
It was big time, and there was a very meta aspect of it about the what lines can we cross to bring truth into story when it's based on real life, and how much do we pull from real life and everything. But I think I ultimately do agree with you, Jeff. And that's one reason why I was so specifically, I wasn't let down, but I was a little surprised that a director like David Fincher, who has pulled off what you were talking about, how do we know it happens, or how do we not, how are we going to be surprised and held in suspense to see if this thing actually gets pulled off, when he has made movies like The Social Network, Seven, Fight Club, where you kind of he's really good at towing the line with suspense and tension. Even Benjamin Button, you kind of knew what that movie was about before you went in. Yeah. I love that movie. There are problems with it, but that thing you're talking about, he does kind of pull you along with a pretty good, I'm not sure where this is going to go after this, even though you already know how that movie's going to go. This one was maybe the first David Fincher movie where I felt like, I think he was hoping that we were going to have a lot of fun, as Dave said, just watching this movie get pieced together creatively in Mankiewicz's head while he's dealing with his obstacles. And I think by not introducing anything new that would make me actually say I wasn't sure how it was going to come together. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, we
all had fun.
There were some great moments. There's a great couple of lines in there. I will, like the walk and talk mayor speech near the beginning.
Yeah.
Is amazing. And then the fact that he literally, after hiring him and doing this whole speech, walks in and tells everyone that they need to cut their salaries by 50%. Like
it's an incredible scene. Yeah,
that is like, not only is it that, it's like that is happening in New York right now. And there are companies trying to get people to take pay cuts because of the pandemic.
Right.
And
would this movie have changed a little bit if it came out next year and they filmed it this year? Do you think? Because I know it's his dad's script, so he wants to be, but like that kind of stuff, it doesn't need to be socially relevant. But as Dave just said, very, very successful billionaire who has servants at his home, well, modern day billionaire, then millionaire, who has servants in his home, is convincing Mankiewicz to walk and talk. You know, everything's great. They pull the strings. They control the wealth. And then he goes in and convinces all of the workers that they have to take a 50%, and they agree to it. So it's political and it's social, socioeconomical stuff that we're dealing with today.
The biggest heartbreak out of this film is the entire state of California could possibly have been saved, but wasn't, because an actress had already made her exit.
Mm-hmm.
Like, they could have stopped everything that happened dead in its tracks. But yeah, like, I was like, that's such a, yeah. I don't even have
Jeff,
words
you
for
touched on it earlier. Jeff, you touched on it earlier with the Sinclair references and him running for the presidential primary.
Sinclair wrote The Jungle and Oil, which There Will Be Blood is based off of, but The Jungle is his bit about the meatpacking industry.
So he was basically running as a socialist at the time. And I think I'm not trying to post-diagnose what could have been done or what should have been done, but I will say my favorite parts about this movie, and the moments where I was the most hopeful and most kind of like, what's he gonna do, is when Mank was engaging with that part of the story. There's a moment where he just goes outside of a club and he's smoking a cigarette and he sees Sinclair giving a platform speech, literally on a soapbox. There's times where he references him in parties with the social elite around a couple different cocktail hours in a famous dinner table scene at William Randolph Hearst's house, who's played by Charles Dance, who was really wonderful. I kind of kept hoping that when I went into this movie as an audience member, I kind of said to myself, David Fincher is either going to crawl out of this trap and blow my mind away, or the trap for this movie is a man sitting at a typewriter, which is always when you're writing about the creation of somebody writing something. There's a couple other famous movies about writers. How do you not just point a camera at somebody when they're like thinking of stuff and typing keys on a typewriter? I think shout out to Baz Luhrmann. I think he did a pretty good job of showing how somebody will be influenced by a story with Moulin Rouge. How does a writer tell a story? How are they compelled to tell a story? Where does all of their food for thought come from? And I think I wanted a little bit more of that and a little less of a fixed set that we keep going back to in this movie, which is Herman Mankiewicz in bed at this chateau in the desert writing this screenplay. And I wasn't mad every time we went back there, but I was way more engaged when he was fired up by what was happening in the real world, not when he was alone dealing with his alcoholism. And that is no shame on David Fincher or Gary Oldman. He played it beautifully. Yeah. I just know that me personally, I kept being like, I leaned forward whenever Sinclair came into it, and whenever he would disagree with Louis B. Mayer on the politics. And then I would sit back whenever he was writing, like actively writing.
Yeah.
So I don't know what that says. I don't know if anybody else felt that way.
Well, let's start heading towards the exit on a high note. Like what else were the exciting things that, like, Dave, what were the other like story things that excited? Obviously the filmmaking is exciting. What were the other
the filmmaking was definitely exciting. I just wanted one quick note of the filmmaking. They did you see the IMDb trivia note where they shot this on a red helium in 8K?
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
In monochrome.
Beautiful.
So no color negative exists of this film. He was that committed to a black and white film.
Jesus.
Yeah.
Wow.
It's
it's gorgeous.
It's like we're going this way.
I know I made that comment early on, but it really is incredible. Story-wise, my favorite scene for sure is the cocktail hour scene when everyone is sitting around in Hearst's parlor in front of the fireplace. And he's standing there in front of the fireplace. And Amanda Seyfried, who is really good in this. I thought she did a really excellent job. People are tossing around stories, and Jeff, you made a comment about would this be different if it was made this year? You know, this year we had the pandemic, but like we've been building up with our political tension to this year. So I think the illusions were pretty conscious. I know his father wrote this years ago, but the way people accidentally that couch full of the girls and the way they accidentally started making comments that were offensive and inappropriate to Louis B. Mayer and his assistant. And then Hearst had to kind of like get in there and say, shush now. And then Mank just couldn't fucking stand it. Smartest person in the room. And he had to say something. Yeah. I felt like there were a lot of moments in this movie where Mankiewicz was a mouthpiece for a reason that I have been looking for like, 4 years. So that was really breathtaking. There was a lot of tension in that scene set in this very static upper class kind of setting. And it worked for me beautifully. I could have watched a whole movie set in that room.
Yeah, me too. That was cool. What about Dave? Any other story parts that jumped out to you?
Like I said, the walk and talk speech for me was a moment. That was so well done. I also love when they were pitching the story at the near the beginning, and they go through this whole pitch, and his closing line is, "That's director proof." Pissed myself laughing. I was like,
yeah,
that's good too.
But there was some good stuff. There was some stuff I didn't really know was why. Like, I mean, I know it actually happened, so like you include it, but you could not have included the side storyline about the husband lost to the war. Maybe, I don't know. Like, that didn't seem like it was a big enough thing.
Agree. I thought about that when it ended, and I went, "Oh, good."
Yeah, she was great. She was great. And I don't know if I needed that from her. I feel like they gave her, thank you, Dave, for saying that. I feel like they gave her a more interesting obstacle than maybe Mank had. Like, they were trying to like give her something to enrich her character.
Well, and hers was just like giving her, you know what I mean? It was, I don't even know if it was.
She was so good though. She was such a good supporting thing to him that I feel like there was already some strange tension there between them, because she was such a good, seemingly good, virtuous person dealing with this mess of a human being. Anyway, thanks for pointing that out. That was good. Jeff, what do you think? What was your favorite part?
I would say similarly to what Dave said, but anytime that Mank was clearly on the opposite political persuasion. And you can see in the room, they did a good job with the reaction shots of not just extras, but other stars that are just responding with their looks, of whenever somebody would say something like, socialism is when the wealth is controlled by everyone, communism is when the poverty is controlled by everybody, or something like that. They would say these things, but like the way that Mank was, as you said, John, the voice of reason, but just as the dissenting voice who speaks out, and if nothing else, makes the people who disagree with him laugh, and so therefore he's in the club. Like they said something funny about William Random Hearst, who is the financier of a lot of these movies because he was a mining tycoon who owned the San Francisco Chronicle. So he funded all the movies. He didn't direct or produce any of them, really. Well, I guess by financing them, he produced them. Charles Dance just liked having him around, even though he disagreed with them. And like that, I think that's really cool. And I think that they nailed that part of the story, which is really cool.
That was a very interesting reveal there.
The walk and talk scene from after Mankiewicz throws up and makes a fool of himself, when William Randolph Hearst walks him out of his gigantic mansion and escorts him to the door. That was brilliant. Charles Dance played it fucking beautifully. The filmmaking was spot on. I wasn't thinking about anything. It was really, really excellent, especially after Gary Oldman put on such a giant
the one thing
show.
I did notice was he had servants standing around just to turn the fucking lights on.
So the lights on. Yes, that's what
Did you guys think, this is the last thing I want to ask you. Did you feel like Gary Oldman, who is such a committed method actor, do you think he got a little lost in the alcoholism? Do you feel like it distracted you ever? You were watching a brilliant actor, like just really, really wasted all the time? Or did you feel like it always serviced the story?
I feel like I feel like it serviced the story. Like when we got to that dinner party, it was fucking uncomfortable to watch.
That was my favorite part. Yeah,
and he went all in on that, and it was a solid performance. Like there's even these subtle little trips down the stairs. It's like I recognize those.
He didn't do the Ben Affleck in The Way Back, where it was only about the alcoholism. The alcoholism was never the only thing. You know what I mean? It was never the reason he was drunk. He wasn't drunk because he was an alcoholic ever in this movie, even though most alcoholics probably would, but he kept it more active. There was always something bugging him. There was always something on his mind, something he was trying to do or accomplish that kept it active. And I thought that worked out really well.
Especially since filmmaking wise, David Fincher always does like tons of takes. He did that scene over 100 times.
Yeah, there was one with there was one with Amanda Seyfried. She did like 200 times, and she didn't even have a line.
Just the fact that Gary was able to sustain the impediment in that amount of takes, it really is remarkable. So watch this movie. Yeah, give it a shot.
Go see it. Tell us, because there's some really fucking exciting stuff. Yeah, the performance is awesome. I cursed. Oh no, we have to do the thing.
What? We've been cursing the whole way through. What are you talking about?
I don't know what the fuck.
All right, people, we got to take a pee break, but go see Mank. It's on Netflix. You're going to be hearing more about Gary Oldman in the next couple months. So do it. Let's do it. Herman Mankiewicz, Oscar winner. All right, people, we're going to take a quick break to pee, and we are going to be back to talk about Tom Hardy in Capone.
Yes.
Back, people.
We're back.
We are back. We're at it. Is Property Daddy still shouting us out? Is he clapping?
I mean, he's. I can't actually see if he's online or not, but I will tell you, Carlos, if you're listening, I just cracked a black lid. I'm that confident we can redeem this film.
9%ers, baby.
I should tell you, this segment's going to
go. If ever there was a movie.
The Imperial Stout by Carlos Barossa. All right, people. So we're going to be talking about our presumed Razzie nominee. Now, just to get into this, we are a positive film podcast. This is a gimmick, right? So we are.
Oh no! You're not setting it up.
So this is we don't have a podcast so that we can shit on films. It's actually quite the contrary. Our job is to talk positively about films. I think we did the best we could with the last film. Trying to get everything we wanted to say, but keeping it positive. I do believe that. So this film, Capone, I guess what? It's about Al Capone. Shock to everybody, right? So Tom Hardy plays famous Chicago mobster Al Capone in his later years in life. One of those little timelines don't matter things, but let's just say the last year of his life, he has been living in this mansion in South Florida for 8 years because, as most people know, Al Capone suffers from what they call in this film neurosyphilis, which I found hilarious, but I guess that's what it's actually called. And apparently he got it when he was 14. I did not know that. So thank you for this movie so that now I know. I got one thing out of this. Neurosyphilis started in Al Capone's body before the age of 15.
I mean,
Anyway,
I would basically, I'd put a caveat down as believing anything this movie presented as fact.
Good point. Josh Trank. Sorry. Okay. So anyway, so this is our presumed Razzie film. So we're gonna have to do our best to try to, give a positive take on this. We love Tom Hardy. That is no surprise to anybody who listens. We love Tom Hardy.
He was awesome in Venom.
Al Capone's last. Awesome in a lot of Dave loves Venom, of course. Of course, that's the Tom Hardy film you choose. Dave.
Yeah.
Dave, who's seen all of our Razzie films.
I mean, I also did like
Tom
him.
Hardy from Venom. Yeah,
I did like him in Terminator Salvation as well.
Yeah. How about what about his Star Trek movie? Do you remind me which Star Trek movie this is?
Jeff?
He's in Salvation.
That's for even bringing that fucking
Salvation?
thing up.
I don't remember him in Salvation, but maybe. I don't know.
I think
He's
it's
a Band of
Sam
Brothers.
Worthington.
Maybe it is.
Yeah.
Dave,
they're irreplaceable.
Okay.
Sure.
All right,
sure.
there we go.
The best part of Capone was Sam Worthington as
Lachlan!
Al Capone. Okay, I'm off track here. First things first, this is on Prime. This is on Amazon Prime right now.
Yeah,
it
Amazon
obviously
Prime,
did not come out in theaters.
Sorry, Sam.
Josh Trank, who unfortunately did the final Fantastic Four movie that maybe will ever be made.
No, there's a new one. They've announced it.
He also made Chronicle. Yeah, but I thought it was just Disney Plus. Who gives a shit? Okay, anyway, so Tom Hardy is in this film, and he's playing Al Capone in his final year of life, who is suffering from dementia, which was caused by having the
Syphilis?
the neurosyphilis for more than 30. It's funny. It's funny. For over 30 years of his life. And yes, penicillin was discovered during his time of life, but it had already taken its toll. So he's going crazy. He's shitting himself, literally.
Yes.
He's shitting the bed.
When he's full method, too, I'm wondering.
He's full method. All those smells that everybody was smelling. All right. Anyway, that's what this movie's about.
Ate a bunch of prunes before that.
And the reason that odds makers, not us, odds makers believe that this is going to be nominated for some Razzie Awards is because it has a 4.7 on IMDb. It has a 46 out of 100 on Metacritic, and it is a 40% on Rotten Tomatoes. And the user reviews on Rotten Tomatoes are worse. It's actually 25% of user reviews. So you're listening at home to this part of the podcast, and you're wondering, why am I even listening to this? Clearly, I shouldn't watch it. Tom Hardy's fucking awesome. He's an awesome actor. So we're going to talk about this goddamn movie, all right? Let's do it, people. Who wants to get us going?
And
Sorry
to add
all
to that
Dave's
list,
fans.
just to kick the HFCS, which is the Hawaii Film Critics Society. This is the nicest state in the union. They have nominated this for the worst film of the year. So
yeah, but they're kind. They probably said it with a way like, we know you tried. You know,
they passed you a joint. Yeah, I know.
Linda Cardellini, Matt Dillon, good cast.
Yeah.
Good cast.
Cardellini was awesome in this.
Yeah, she really.
I mean, to be honest, so was Tom Hardy. He was great in this. Not for a second did you not believe he was an aging man losing his mind with dementia.
Yeah, his pupils were.
And even the look, like he loves having the makeup plastered on him, but like the look they got pretty much right.
Right.
All right.
Yeah.
So I'm going to disagree with you.
Right off the bat, come on, we're a positive film podcast.
No, I'm going to say there is positive criticism in here. I always believe Tom Hardy. I do think he's a good actor, and I think there are some people who are not Tom fans, and I don't understand it. I think he's got a wide range. I think he's really great. But one thing that I always have to kind of just sign on for every time I go see a Tom Hardy movie is that he's going to be doing a different voice. And sometimes the voice does or doesn't work for me. Sometimes it can be a little distracting. I always believe what's behind the voice. He has a wonderful
Everybody
instrument.
knows when you see a Tom Hardy film, turn on the fucking subtitles.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, right. It's going to be a little weird.
The Revenant he made up his accent. That's my favorite Tom Hardy's trivia.
Jeff, the first time I saw you and I went and saw The Revenant together with a buddy of ours, and I think you and I had a similar conversation when we walked out. I still bought everything, just like with this film, but this was probably the most I had to work to get past the voice. And I don't know
I thought you were
if
going to say you like this better than The Revenant for a second. I'm sorry.
No, I don't. No, I don't think so. I think this one got in the way for me. I saw in his, I saw in his eyes. I have a decent sized television. I kind of pulled up a little closer. I was like, he's doing the work. I'm believing what's behind it. I just don't know why they cast him. I feel like he
was cast for 10 years to do this role. He's not even 47 yet in real life. No, and I believe.
All right, so then let me take it to the next point that I kept thinking about.
Is it the voice or is it what was written for him?
The shitting the bed. Oh, sorry, what were you saying?
Is it the voice or is it what he was saying, like what was written for him? Because I lay the blame for this entire film squarely on Josh Trank. It was like written by, directed by, edited by. He probably did fucking catering as well. So it's like at some point, hand off your project to like another collaborator so that you get. It might have been a better film if he had have taken a step back and let some other people collaborate.
Which was your favorite shitting the pants moment? Because he shat his pants a couple times in this movie.
I think my favorite is the end one, the FBI interview.
The FBI interview.
Yeah.
The bed one was funny, but it ended too quick. Sorry, John. Were you talking about something serious?
The bed one was just fucking tragic.
We're talking about a movie
this man takes a shit on screen.
Yeah.
This man takes a shit on
John's
screen.
Like,
so,
let's break down the screenplay for a second. What?
Okay. I guess I don't. All right. This is what I went into this movie thinking. And again, I'm not saying like. I hate it when people go in with a movie in their head and when they're constantly thinking about a movie in their head. This isn't what I was doing, but I was. Afterwards, I was thinking like, all right, what can we say, to try to redeem this movie? I was a little confused why they cast an actor who was younger than Capone to play up and not take advantage of that fact to have him play flashbacks. I kept thinking they're going to flash back at some point and we're going to get a little bit more context for how he got here, even though Capone is really famous and we've all seen, maybe movies that are based on him, maybe most famously.
Although, I mean, a couple of weeks ago with the Five Bloods, it worked perfectly.
Where they were going, but they were still flashing back.
Yeah, they were flashing back, but they were flashing back as themselves. So they basically they flipped it.
So I don't think his. So I don't think his are these were. I don't know if these were actual flashbacks or if these were.
This was dementia trips, and like from that perspective. Yeah. It was done extremely well. I thought so too. For anyone who wants to come into this movie knowing what to expect, it's kind of like The Godfather meets The Shining.
It was. What did you think, though? I will ask you specifically.
Interesting.
Matt Dillon's character was introduced realistically away from Tom Hardy. How was he not real? Did you guys catch that?
Yes.
We went to his apartment in New York in real time. And he was having sex with that woman, and he got the phone call, and then he's not real. That literally confused me.
Dude, I was so confused by that point. I was so confused by that point. I missed the point that he wasn't real.
Yeah.
Well, because he was the guy in the flashback that actually might have been a dementia trip that was based in reality, if that makes sense.
I guess so. I mean, I guess that's what it was, but. There were multiple times. Anyway, what I was saying was there was. I thought they were going to give us a little bit more context because unless you've seen, some movies that like Public Enemy and some things that are loosely based on him. And Jeff, what is that goddamn De Palma movie? Robert De Niro plays Capone and Kevin Costner.
The Untouchables.
The Untouchables. Thank you, The Untouchables. So we've seen, that's probably the most famous one where they try to realistically portray Capone, but that is for 4
Sean
months
Connery's
where they're
my favorite
working
in
a
that.
case. No, it's great.
And then
that scene where he walks back into the shack to interrogate someone is amazing.
Yeah, it's awesome. It's awesome. It's a good movie. So I wanted more. I guess I was kind of expecting them to actually play with his reality.
If you listen to us talk about Capone, go watch The Untouchables. Yeah.
Yeah, I know what you mean, John. Well, what about so let's say this though, because there are some I second everything you're saying, and I'm not gonna dive into that for this very second. But let's say this: there were a lot of moving sequences. So a lot of these, we're calling them dementia trips. I don't know why we coined that, but that's what they are.
Yeah.
That these sequences. So one scene trickles into another. Very Sinitas-esque, by the way. Shout out to our Sinitas donors. Thank you so much for giving us money. What did some of the sequences catch you?
Yes, yeah, for sure, yeah.
Nice.
Yeah, like, I thought that there were some. The
next stab was pretty
the
fun.
the first torture scene for Matt Dillon's character. The first time they went in, that guy fucking stabbed the shit out of him.
Stab.
Yeah, for like 5 minutes.
Yeah, I mean,
and
I
that
was
scene didn't come out of nowhere. That was like the third scene in a sequence. So kudos, Josh.
Yeah, I thought that there were moments that worked. Yes, there were definitely a lot of moments that worked for me. I just wasn't quite sure. And you don't need to know this when you're watching a movie. This my favorite feeling when I'm watching a really excellent movie. That is, I understand what you said, Dave, but I don't really mind if somebody has a lot of control as long as they're really nailing it. You know, you can just tell when somebody isn't really nailing it, and so a collaborator would be helpful.
Really,
my favorite feeling. It really wasn't. My favorite feeling when I'm watching a movie is that I'm not quite sure what's happening, but I'm in good hands. I know I'm in good hands, and this is all going to come together, and there's going to be some kind of deliverance. And I felt like the entire time I had the bad version of that, where I didn't know what was happening, and I didn't know where we were going, and I wasn't sure Josh Trank was going to wrap it up, and so that I was going to have this catharsis. So there were moments that were filmed really well, that were acted, pretty damn well, and that were not written badly. And I just wasn't sure after the fact why I watched any of it. I'm not quite sure how it all fit together.
That's a similar note I have here. It's like, what was the purpose of this whole film? Like, I really feel sorry for Tom Hardy because he, at times, really acted his ass off. Linda Cardellini did amazingly as the long-suffering wife. Like, all the cast was solid, but there was just nothing here. There was no thread, no redemption, no real story, nothing.
I guess
what was the story, you guys? What was the story? What was the?
They're too obsessed with Capone. This is a guess. I'm not going to speculate too much. They're too obsessed with Capone and not what happens to someone who had power, money, and everything, and then it all comes crumbling down. Like the human journey of that.
Yes.
And we cared way too much about the fact that it was Capone. When the truth is, this wasn't even really Capone anymore. So even the questions, it was sustaining for a little bit where I'm like, how is this guy living in this house? How does he have this mention? He's been in prison for 10 years. He hasn't had a paycheck in 20. The government should have seized every asset, including this house. Why is he even there? So that sustained me for a little bit. So that Capone element was fun. The fact that he could do whatever. I don't even know if the shit he was doing was real or if it was imaginary, which is fine. That's okay. But why is any of this happening? And I think the answer to all of my questions is just, well, it's Al Capone.
And also, like, why, if you were going to make a movie called Capone, why would you pick this point in his life? Like, there is
why would you pick it unless you're going to do what Jeff was saying? You're going to do what Jeff was saying. If Capone was going to be a good vehicle to explore those issues, then sure, we all know him now. We have access to it. Let's go for a ride. But I don't think they did that. I think they kept trying to ride the mobster line, which didn't make any fucking sense when it was supposed to be about his mental decline. And they kept trying to make it about Capone, the legacy of the ultimate mobster. And that was way less interesting to me than if they would have really delved in to seeing somebody battle with that. And I don't know if I had Josh Trank across from me, I would want to ask him, did you want me to judge Al Capone, or did you want me to actually see what the end of life can be like for someone who goes from the top to the bottom? Because I feel like those are two different stories.
Yeah,
was I supposed to go on the dementia journey or the
not sure
fall
what he was
from
trying
grace?
to say here. Like, and then we have that whole thing with the alligator and the tidal wave and the. I know.
Wish you did that effect.
Cool.
I'm glad I didn't. Actually, that would have taken weeks.
Yeah, you would have been paid for it. But yeah.
That was a very cool effect. That was a cool sequence.
It was, but what was the point of that after all of everything we've been through that hadn't even touched on any of that? Like, it was.
But if it had just been things like that, I think he could have weaved together a lot of really interesting where Capone was committed and sincere and not just sitting there with the camera pointed at him where he was totally spaced out. And he could have puzzled those pieces together so that it would have had an interesting narrative and it would have commented on what Jeff was saying. Yeah. This is what it feels like when you're scrambled.
Also, this.
But instead, I don't know what the fuck it was.
Yeah.
I know. I'm sorry.
I want to bring up an interesting point too, because I had to because I don't know that much about Capone. I'm not like big on the history. I know a little bit, but I didn't know when he died, and I felt like this was the 60s, not the 40s.
Was it Scarface? Did it have like a Scarface feel? Which is
it was more the color was like the color was vibrant. The color it was like nothing dated it until they showed it a radio, and I was like,
filmmaking wise, I thought about that, Dave. Like, yeah. Was it a trap? Was it a trap? Because this is a decision, listeners, that you have to make early on. We're stuck in fucking Florida. Do we film it realistically with bright, vibrant colors, or do we stylize it? I kind of wanted him to stylize it a little bit because that did throw me off a little bit, that it was so vibrant. I know there was probably something that he was hoping would come from that. But I don't know, for you guys, tell me if you
dementia. What are we doing with all these bright colors as if we're in like what dreams may come or whatever with Robin Williams.
Dreams may come. Yeah.
It was so bright. The guy has dementia. It's okay to gray up the palette a little bit.
Yeah. I wanted a little bit more style, and yet I'm not quite sure. This is just sometimes art works and it doesn't. Did you guys have the feeling when it finally got to Capone at the very beginning, when it finally showed you the title slate and that music dropped?
Were you nervous?
I was like, what the fuck movie are we? I was like, guys, what's happening?
Filmmakers, do not put Nessun Dorma in your film. Fucking for the love of God, that is the only fucking opera aria in any film, and they played this 4 fucking times. We had so many chances to get another film, and we're sitting here. First of all, it was Pavarotti, right? Pavarotti wasn't even singing yet by the time this movie takes place. Have some balls and pick an aria, and even put Callus when she's younger. Remaster it or something. Nessun Dorma is such a fucking cheap shot, right? God, a Mission Impossible movie blows people up at the high note. Like it's done. It's done. You might as well have put Stairway to Heaven in this fucking movie. Like, get out. Stop it.
Jesus. Yeah. How long have you been holding on to that?
Yeah.
It's John's favorite opera, but god damn it, does Nessun Dorma need to take a fucking break? Retire it.
Yeah, it's like it's the pop culture version of opera arias. Like, there are other really beautiful things. All right, let me try to redeem it here. You're right, Dave. Linda was wonderful. My favorite moment in this whole movie is when she slaps the shit out of him. That when he says something to her and she says, "What the fuck?" and she slaps him.
When he spits in her face, yeah.
And she hits him so fucking hard, and he goes down so hard. I laughed at it. He performed that fall really well. He was out like a light. I guess I wanted a little bit more of her. I kept feeling like, oh, let me go a little bit down this road, and I wonder what they're thinking a little bit more. And whenever you have that feeling, it's always a bad sign. I kind of wish this movie was completely from her point of view, since
that would have been so great.
Utterly unrelatable. We could not understand what the fuck was happening to him. So give
half
me
the time you couldn't understand what the fuck he was saying either. So it was like, what I feel like, and somebody did describe this in a review.
Yeah.
That all the secondary characters were literally just foils to accentuate his experience. Like there was no texture to them. There's no reason. And I think Cardellini came the most to actually having a layered character. But the rest of them were literally just there to bounce off what he was doing.
Well, which is that in a normal, that's not the right word. Follow me. When you're dealing with a protagonist, there are typically supporting characters that are going to come in and do exactly that. They're going to foil, they're going to challenge, and we might not need to know their entire point of view and story as long as there is a journey for the protagonist. Do you guys think his character learned anything in this entire film? That's really what it came down to, was that these people didn't change him at all. No. His circumstance did not change him.
Like
so I don't really know if there was any reason.
The description of this film is he starts to regret his previous violence, and I didn't get that at all. He's literally just wandering through it in a fucking dazed state.
I agree, dude. I agree. That was what and maybe I should not have read that description. I don't know if anybody else. Sometimes I like reading them. Sometimes I wish I hadn't. I wish I hadn't read that one.
Yeah, it's right there on the fucking screen before you hit play. It's like that's what they went with, and that was not what we got.
Yeah. And I'm sure that to Josh Trank, let's tip our hats for a second. I'm sure that is a very difficult line to walk when you're dealing with a protagonist who is having an intense mental decline with dementia. But I think there maybe is a more creative way to imagine what it would feel like to go through that and still, quote, learn something as an audience member through what's happening to this character. And I just don't know if he achieved that. I know I hate saying that, but I wanted to love this movie. I love Tom Hardy, and everybody around him did a good job. Matt Dillon, that scene when he's next to him by the bed, I was all in. I was like, this is cool, dude. He's doing a good job. I feel like he's right from that period. I liked it. I liked Al Sapienza, his brother-in-law, Ralphie. I think it's his brother. Excuse me. I think it's his brother. I thought he did a great job.
Like there was that whole extra thing with the kid that kept calling the house.
The son, Tony.
Yeah, and like there was almost no point to that storyline either. There was no point to the hidden money. That was like almost a device just to keep the story going. And which led to the scene at the end where he shits himself during the interview. Like I feel like everything, that whole storyline was put in there for that one scene, and it's just there was a lot of stuff that should have worked and didn't. And I'm landing it squarely on the writing, guys. I'm landing it squarely on the writing.
Definitely started with that.
I don't know what he was going for, but it just
if filmmaking is an extension of writing a script, then the writing in general.
You're only as good as your source material.
I dare you.
I want to take issue with the Tommy gun. I'm sorry, a fucking gold Tommy gun.
You like the Tommy gun?
That didn't happen.
I could not stop thinking about when we were talking about what was the racing movie with Sylvester Stallone?
Dave.
The racing?
Was that bad?
Oh yeah.
Chase across the country.
Death Race 2000.
Death Race. I could not stop thinking about when Jeff said, and Stallone pulls out a Depression era machine gun, talking about a Tommy gun. I could not stop thinking about that.
Depression era.
That made me fucking piss myself. I dare you. Here's my drinking game.
Okay.
I dare you to drink every time you can't understand Tom Hardy. I dare you.
Kill people.
I have a better drinking game. I dare you to drink. I dare you to drink every time you think he sounds like the grandfather from Christmas Vacation.
A blessing.
A blessing. Guys, Nessun Dorma is the wrong song. The Nessun Dorma is about how no one will sleep because I will win. He's dying. Choose Addio Fiorito Azil about how he's saying goodbye to the house because he can't see. Like, I stop it.
Really, I'm sorry. That's the only thing you've got to criticize is fucking music choices.
That's where I'm at. That's where I'm at with this film. When I heard it the third or fourth time, I was like, fucking choice.
Dave, what's your drinking game? What are you gonna paralyze us with in this movie?
Yeah, bring us home with this drinking game.
Yeah. I don't know. I think
the carrot for a cigar was funny.
I would have to say
that was funny.
I couldn't even tell you what, like, the drinking game would be for every minute this is playing, to be honest.
Get out of here. Every time you celebrate the fact that he's trying to kill a crocodile, and you're like, you know what? Crocodile should go. Not a good movie, but god damn it, he killed a crocodile.
They're a fucking menace. Shoot him. Yeah,
actually, sorry. I'm so sorry, people. What? They're alligators. They're not crocodiles.
Yeah, they're alligators. What was the significance of the kid on the other side of the lake, or whatever was on the other side of the lake going on? Did anyone pick up on that? He was being
watched. They were banging it over the head that he felt like he was being watched. We know he was being watched because they told us in the opening credits he was being watched. So he was sitting there. It's like, I think I'm being watched, and we're like, you are. He told us that. He was like, they're watching us, the fucking feds, man. And we're like, yes, you're in a federal compound. That's your parole. Get out of here. Like, anyway, yeah. That's what it was.
Okay, I think this was a miss for me. I can't redeem this.
Yeah, so far, you guys,
thumbs up or thumbs down on this movie?
Hold on, wait. We've watched four so far. This is my Razzie vote so far. I would rather watch the Last Thing He Wanted than this movie. How about you guys? I know you both had a lot of issues with The Last Thing He Wanted. I think this was worse than that movie.
Huh. Yes, I think this is worse than that movie. I'm thinking, okay, we did Fantasy Island, and then what was the first? Oh,
Fantasy Island was better
Dr.
than
Dolittle.
this.
Yeah, this is probably
Dr. Dolittle was way better than this. Yeah.
Way better, dude.
Yeah.
It's too bad
Anyway,
because he
positive
should still
film
get he should still get a
criticism.
movie. Maybe not
I mean,
a Star Wars movie.
At
but he
the
should
end
get
of
a movie.
this, we're definitely going to do a special show where we make our list for our predictions.
There's
Which
a
is
whole-
too bad because we were
yeah.
trying to avoid it, but it has to happen.
Yeah, it has to.
All right,
happen.
people.
I loved. Oh wait, last Kyle MacLachlan was my saving
No,
grace
no.
in this film.
It
I
was
liked- I
it was
liked him.
fun
I
to
liked him
see
in
him
this
do a
movie.
grounded role. It was after all
Yeah, I enjoyed
the
it.
eccentric stuff he's been doing
He did.
lately. It was fun to see him do something
Him
normal.
and Linda Cardellini were in a better movie than this.
Yeah, dude. Yeah,
and Tom
fucking
Hardy
sure.
is good, but anyway. All right, people,
Wow.
that's it. Thank you for sticking around to the end of this. So both of these movies are streamable. Mank on Netflix, and then Capone with the drinking game. I hope available on Amazon Prime right this very second. Join us next week. Does somebody please have this up? Because I had technical
Jeff's
issues.
gonna
before we
like
started.
it. Next
I'm
week,
gonna like it.
next week we're doing the Sound of Metal.
Nice. I've seen
Yeah.
it twice already.
Yes,
I've been holding off. I'm so excied. Yay.
me too.
Also on
And
Prime.
a film called 365 Days. I have no idea what that even is. I've never even heard
Not
of
this year. We had a leap year. It's 366 this year.
it.
Of
Jeff,
course, because 2020 needed an extra day.
Where are both of those, Dave? Where are those watchable?
I don't know. That'll go on the socials as soon as I figure it out
Well,
after this show.
Sound of Metal is definitely on Prime.
There you
For
go.
sure.
Yeah, Sound of Metal is definitely on Prime.
Okay, I see.
And
I'm
300,
thinking a Sound of Metal watch party.
365 Days is on Netflix, and Sound of Metal is on Prime.
Nice. All right,
Cool.
people.
Awesome.
We'll see you next week. Thanks for another episode of the Love of Cinema Pod. Take care.
Peace.